Wealth is a Choice podcast. Boom.
Let's listen to it. Let's listen to it.
All right. I'm here with Stephen Merz with Trek, the legend, master bike fitter. I'd like to tell everybody how I first met you, if you don't mind. I'm going to take it back a few years.
Please.
Quite a few years, actually. It's been a long time now.
I'm glad you remember.
Yeah. So in 2018, I did a ride around the UP. I had no idea what I was getting into. I was a triathlon guy, and I decided to take a road bike, which I didn't have when I decided to do this, but I found one, Trek Bicycle. Take a road bike around the UP. It was a 1,200-mile ride. It was 10 different days, so about 120 miles a day. And I had never ridden in a group before, and this was my first time on a road bike for any length of time. And as a matter of fact, to just show people how naive I was, I only had triathlon shorts, which are basically like just a pair of shorts. You know, there's like no padding there whatsoever. By the end of day one, which is kind of interesting that it happened so quickly because that was only about 115 miles, my left hand was pretty numb. And when I went out to dinner that night, I had some difficulty holding my fork. And then by the end of day two, I could hardly eat with my left hand. By the end of day three, I had a lot more numbness going on, and I was starting to get a little bit freaked out about what am I doing to my body? Like, is this going to be a lasting impact? Like, what in the world is going on? I hadn't experienced
injury.
Like, I don't need to do this ride and come back only able to use one hand because
Yeah.
my right hand's kind of messed up, and I'm going to mess both of them up.
That's right.
So some of the people there had experienced numbness before, and they were talking about a nerve being pinched in my collarbone and other things. And so over the course of the rest of the ride, as other riders would come join, they'd give me tips to opening that up, relieve the pressure off my nerve. Yeah. And the numbness went down, but it was not a comfortable ride to say the least. So I get done with the thing. I survived, managed. And I looked for somebody that could fit me on my road bike. And I was told to call you, which I did. And
you went into our store in Royal Oak.
I went to Royal Oak, and they said you got to call Steve.
Yeah.
And so I did. I came out here, and you fitted me on my bike, and I learned more about bike fitting and more about these small incremental changes that can take place that can make you a much more comfortable and powerful rider.
That was just it's crazy that we've known each other since 2018. I had just moved back here from Oregon, and we're still working together, which really kind of shows how much you can change and how much your equipment needs to change with you. So
Right.
you've continued to kind of seek my advice. And I appreciate that. It's been a nice long road and fun to see all the new adventures that you're going on and keeping me in the loop. So I appreciate that.
I definitely get more out of it, I'm sure, than you do. So thank you. So can you talk about bike fitting?
Sure.
We all grew up riding bikes. Little kid, you
Yep.
hop on a Huffy or something,
Yep.
raise the seat up or down, and you
Yep.
go for a ride.
Yep.
And you kind of think in your mind, well, that's just what it takes to ride a bike. I get a bike, I change the seat up or down, and off I go. But as I found on my experience, like, you need more than that.
Yeah. This is where my passion lives, is in this studio, fitting people to their bikes. And what I think I really like about bike fitting is that it's so personal, right? Everybody is different. They've got an injury history, right? Maybe if they don't have an injury history, because God bless them, they're young and they're free from that. They've got mobility stuff that they might not be aware of. Thanks, mom and dad. There's just a lot of avenues to dig into,
Okay.
to make sure that we're achieving whatever goal that they're coming to see me about,
Okay.
Whether that be relieving pain, whether that be health and wellness, whether that be performance gains. The equation's always changing, right? Now, the parts and pieces of the bike, there are quite a few different parts and pieces in the bike, but ultimately what we've boiled it down, and my mentor, Porrick McGlynn, used to say, it's just ass and hands in space.
Okay.
And it's relative to the center of the bike, right? Relative
Okay.
to the bottom bracket. But, ultimately what we're trying to achieve is a balance between your body's weight distribution on the bike and then distances from the center of the bike, so that we're achieving a position or a range of motion or a biomechanical correctness that's appropriate to you, your proportions, your range of motion, your injury history, et cetera, or your discipline, right? It's very different to ride for weight loss, health and wellness versus, the Tour de Youp, right? That's or an Ironman for example. So the type of riding, the age of the rider, the injury history, that all factors in, right? Okay, so you've got all the ingredients. Once you've nailed down all the ingredients and you've identified the goal, then the analysis comes in, and then we start talking about parts and pieces and the orientation of those parts and pieces to accommodate or complement the rider, right?
I do want to say before you get into that, I remember now that you're talking about this, when I first came in, and you've got the massage table right there. You did have me lay down, and you're looking at the hip.
Yeah.
The feet, where things are located, how things move.
Yeah.
I remember that now. Yeah.
Yeah. How we with cycling, it's all about efficiency.
Okay.
Right. So how we can get your position into your medium range of motion, because it's a bell curve. We don't want to be at your maximum range of motion where you're starting, your muscle, your power is starting to dwindle. We want to put you in that repeatable, sustainable place. Right. So your hips, your knees, your ankles. Yeah. It definitely becomes we want to do no harm first and foremost, right? So we want to understand a little bit about your physiology before we get into the actual position that we're going to try to sustain.
Okay.
So once we identify those things and orient all the parts and pieces where they need to be, we have certain confirmation from the angles of the body. We have confirmation from pressure. We take pressure at the saddle to make sure that the largest and arguably the most important contact point is happy and moving correctly. And then, ultimately the rider does have a say in this, even though we're collecting all this data, looking at spin scan, looking at the power balance left and right. We want to see a smile on your face too, right? That's a big indicator that things have moved in the right direction.
Bike, you should feel good.
Yeah, it should feel good. Yeah,
Yeah.
Absolutely. So we want to make sure that we include the rider in the conversation.
Okay.
It's not about just collecting data and just telling you, hey, the numbers are perfect. Now go out there and give it your all. No, we want to make sure that you're mentally invested, in not only in the process, but the end result.
Okay. Couple things I remember on our first meeting. Now, you've hit me for a number of bikes since then, but on that first one, I had too much weight on my hands, not enough on my seat.
Yeah.
And when you made adjustments, one of the things that shocked me is my power went up.
Yeah.
But I wasn't working any harder.
Yeah, we tapped in. Yeah, I remember this. We tapped into a muscle group that was basically shut off.
Right.
So if you look at EMG studies of cycling muscles being used during cycling, you see actually a really big number around the glute max, so your hip openers. Mm-hmm. And I think as a society, sitting's the new smoking, so we do a really good job of turning off our glutes these days and just neutralizing a very large power producing muscle on the bike. So when you have somebody whose center of gravity is shifted forward onto the front of the bike, that it is quad dominant. I mean, it's like doing a squat with a lot of knee over toe. It's just a lot of quads, which means you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, right? Okay. And from a sustainability standpoint, you really want to maximize each muscle group's contribution, right? Okay. So how are we going to get those glutes firing to add another 20% power just by shifting your weight onto them? It activates them like that, and sure enough, your power goes up, the weight comes off the front end of the bike, and we've killed two birds with one stone.
Right.
Performance and comfort.
Right.
And so ultimately what you have in bike fit is you have comfort, which is king. You have power, which is performance, and then you have aerodynamics.
Okay.
And you kind of rearrange those pillars depending on the discipline or what it is that we're trying to achieve. But there's sometimes a trade-off.
Okay.
Now for touring, for the Tour de Youp, you really don't want to sacrifice anything. You know, it's
Right.
like how can we orient all three of these pillars to be equally as important, because you've got 100-mile days.
Yep.
One after the other, after the other, after
Right.
the other.
If you're doing them all.
Yeah, and I mean, the recovery, your guidance with recovery and nutrition is just as important. Bike fit's just really kind of the jump off point.
Yep. So I want to talk about comfort, because that's something that's been highlighted more recently. It was all wind tunnel testing, and now there's a realization that life is outside of a wind tunnel.
Yeah.
And how important that is. So I think the industry has been realizing that over the last few years. But before we get to that, what you're describing is very interesting. The focus on efficiency, gaining more power out of the engine.
Yeah.
And I have to, this podcast is called Wealth is Choice, so I got to pull in a couple of financial parallels once in a while.
Yeah.
And what I see with money is kind of like with biking. In the bike, if somebody shows up to the tour, the human body is the engine, I say, the bike is the transmission, and the engine shows up with its amount of power that it's capable of producing. So whatever you did to get you to day one of the tour, that's what you have available to you at that time. Now, bikers build more muscle and more endurance over the course of the tour, but day one they show up, they have what they have. And when you look at money, we have something similar to that. We make a certain amount of money. We have a certain amount of obligation. We have a certain amount of resources. And with money, you're looking for those the same way you analyze the weight on the hands and the seat and finding those efficiencies. Can I get more firing out of the glutes by changing the position? That with money, I think people need to do the same thing. I say need, because I think you start with efficiency, because you got a finite amount of resource. And even if you added more power, and you didn't fix those efficiencies, you would never get the capability out of that.
Yeah, and what's
power.
the trade-off, right?
So if you add more income and you've never solved for the problems, you never figured out what the problems are, that income, you're not really going to realize it.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, it could be wasted, right? I mean, we talk about wasted watts all the time. You're just going to be leaking.
And I think with money, people do seek more income. They seek more resources. They seek, how am I gonna get more coming in before they look at what am I doing with what I have to offer. And I think on the bike, most people I talk to, like I talked to a lady the other day. She wants to do the tour. She's intimidated by it. She wants to do all 10. It kind of surprised me. Why do people feel like they got to do all 10 or none at all? Like, I don't get
Prove
that.
it to themselves.
You can do
right?
one or two. It's fine. It's great. But anyway, she wants to do all 10, and we've emailed. I haven't talked to her on the phone, but she is. Her first response was, "I need to go to the gym tomorrow," and I have no idea. She might already have enough power.
So
you know what I mean?
so
But inherently, we're like, if I have a money problem, my first response is I need to make more income.
Yeah.
Or if I have if I want to accomplish a biking endeavor, the first thing I do is got to build more muscle.
I mean, that advice alone, let's do more with what you have first,
Right.
is calming. Right. So whether we're talking about an athlete or you're talking about financial advice, that already puts me at ease.
Yep.
Because it kind of says, like, let's work on being let's work on making sure we're not wasting what we have first, and then we can talk about what more we can do.
Right.
Right. Which is great, because then when you talk about what more we can do, let's build a plan. Right. Versus, you get somebody like this gal that's just like, well, I know what the goal is. I want to do all 10 days. I just need to work harder.
Right.
Maybe
there's a bit of that.
Yeah.
But
sure.
first, you better figure out
the plan. I mean, the plan.
how
is
much of what you
paramount.
already have to offer is getting utilized.
Yep. Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And I think we see that in the Fit Studio a lot, where you get a lot of folks that come out of the studio and they're like, damn, I should have done this a long time ago.
I don't think you've ever heard anybody say, damn, I'm glad I waited 5 years to get this
Yeah,
done.
right. No, it's and it's like, well, you're here now, right?
Yeah.
So glad you're here now. You got a lot of the great thing about cycling is you can do it well into your 80s.
Yes.
We've got a lot of active, aging athletes that are well into their 80s, and
And honestly, now with e-bikes, it even
Sure.
opened it up even more.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can basically roll back that clock and
Right.
and put them back, 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
Because you're adding to,
Right.
you're adding 100%, which is great. It does.
I love it. I think it's fantastic.
Me too.
Yeah.
Better
than driving your car somewhere. You
it was
jump
a-
on that thing, get some exercise.
certainly,
Yeah.
as long as you're outdoors more, we support it.
Yeah.
From a performance side of things, it's not always about finding that fine line of like suffering and and marginal gain. Sometimes it's just the health and wellness of the mind, right?
Right.
So it's nice to be able to provide those types of things where we're just giving people peace of mind. We're getting them outside. They're happier. That goes a long way, right? That's probably the biggest determiner of longevity right there is happiness
Yeah.
and being part of something bigger than yourself, right?
Yeah.
So cycling's got a great community around it.
Let me ask you about comfort.
Yeah.
So, like I said, I started with triathlons, and it was all about aero. And I remember I don't even know if I can see them anymore. I don't know if you guys have them in your store. Remember those long ass aero helmets where the little tail came all the way down to the middle of your back?
Yeah.
And in a wind tunnel, those
Yep.
things were fantastic.
Yep. In a vacuum.
But then as soon as you turn your head and you got that big tail, sticking
Right.
halfway
Right.
out, whatever the incremental gain that you got, that you had to sustain that position for 20 minutes in order to, drop your drag coefficient by whatever.
Yep.
And then you turn your head and you immediately negate those 20 minutes of perfect position. So the real world
Yep.
wasn't always rewarding that technological advance that was realized in the wind tunnel.
It's tough to it's a tough like mind shift. There was a no, this is what the data shows, right? Well, yeah, but what are the chances that the wind is going to be at 0 to 5
Right.
degrees of yaw for the
Right.
duration of
Doing 112 miles, maybe doing a loop
very
or an
very
in and
very
out.
slim, right? Like
Yes.
I used to work with an aerodynamicist in Scottsdale, and he would take away their water bottles.
Yeah.
We didn't have aero water bottles at that time.
Yeah.
Like it's a circle.
Yeah.
Like why would you put it on a foil? Well, they need to hydrate.
Right.
So it was it's always that balance between like the engineer that is trying to get to their result and the mechanic who needs it to be functional.
Right.
And bikes are no different. So yeah, we luckily have gotten to a really good place in product development where we're considering real world
Yeah. Uh,
aspect.
Each time I've seen some change from a biker standpoint, the bikers, I don't want to say, I don't know if don't believe it, but maybe don't believe it. That might be, I can't think of anything else right now. But like you're drilled in, you pay money for less weight and less drag.
Mm-hmm.
And we were drilled in to keep paying for less weight and less drag.
Biathlon,
Right.
BUY.
Yeah. And then like with these helmets and stuff. But the other thing with comfort is then 120 PSI on a 23 millimeter tire was like riding a steel tire on a chunky road. You got the shit beat out of you. And now embracing, and it took me a little while, but embracing a 28 or 32 millimeter tire pumped up to 60 PSI on a
Sure.
tubeless tire,
Yep.
riding so smooth, when this whole time it was drilled into me, I had to have this narrow, hard as a rock thing
Yep.
in order to be faster.
Yeah.
But you can correct me if I'm wrong, but my experience is that they do appear to be faster. I don't know how they show up on a wind tunnel, but in real life, I have found that comfort is a really big deal, because if you're comfortable, you can sustain a better position for a
Right.
longer period of time.
Well, that's
you can
just it.
sustain your output for a longer period of time. You don't have to stand up and like, oh my God, I'm dying. You can keep working for a longer period of time.
That's right. I mean, basically, you're going to have to absorb what the tires don't or what the bike doesn't.
Right.
And if your muscles are constantly being inundated with all that impact and vibration and low frequency, high frequency, what have you, it's going to fatigue.
Right.
And that's, I mean, you look at like massage guns these days, the percussion guns. The idea is to get the muscle to give up. That's what that
Okay.
repetitive bop, 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 you know, get the muscle to turn off, because a lot of our muscles eventually they stay on all the time, and then that's how you get injuries and what have you. But the point is, you know, if you can get the bike or the tire to do some of that work for you, then the muscle's not fatiguing, then you can go further. Right. Absolutely. So yeah, that comfort, the topic of comfort is not just about, you know, numbness or a plush saddle or center of gravity, right? It's like what's happening internally to the muscle as it's being used or abused in a lot of scenarios. Yeah, so thankfully, you know, we've gotten a good amount of information and data around smoother is faster, and once that came out, you know, it was like, oh yeah, why have we been, you know, here in Southeast Michigan, why have we been riding the way we have when we don't live on Arizona roads, you know, like, so why isn't our performance as good as maybe somebody out west? Well, the conditions, right?
Okay.
And so we need to tailor that equipment to the conditions that we're up against.
Okay.
Certainly.
Yeah. Have you seen other aspects besides the tire in comfort that kind of bucked the conventional trend from years back? It seems like bikes have changed a lot.
Yeah, the geometry of the bike for sure has become just more like body friendly, the angles of the bike. So, you know, it kind of like what you were saying is like long and low. Like originally it was like, how can we get that head down and that ass up? You know, how can we become more of a foil? We actually had a pro rider who was incredibly flexible. And we were like, well, we can fold this person in half. They're made out of rubber bands. You know,
I cannot do that.
This is great.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
But we actually found there was diminishing returns because we were past that, like that bell curve. We were going into their maximum range of motion. So the higher we actually brought this rider, the power actually went up. Right?
Okay.
You know, I mean, it was interesting because they could stay lower for longer.
Okay.
Right? So sustainability. So the geometry of the bikes have changed for the better. You know, we were trying to kind of force a square into a circle for a long time, where we were taking TT bikes and telling people they were tri bikes. We were taking, you know, pro road bikes and just lengthening the wheelbase, but not doing anything with the head tube for endurance bikes and touring, right? So now you've got so many more variations of the bicycle that you've got a wide range to pick from. But most of these bike manufacturers have actually started to kind of cater to a certain, like, I don't want to say average, but just like a more realistic body type. You actually don't even have men-women specific bikes anymore, which is really interesting because the longest time we were like, finally women have their own bike, but really we just needed more usable shapes, and then it was up to guys and gals like me to identify, you know, where those shapes match up. Interestingly enough, the rate of C-section in the U.S. is about 30% cesareans.
Okay.
And the amount of women that are actually born with male-shaped pelvises is about 30%. So they're actually narrow and tall pelvises. So it kind of lines up, right? Makes perfect sense. Conversely, men actually are born with wide and broad pelvises as well. So for the longest time, they were being stuck on these narrow saddles where it was like, you know, this is a men's seat.
Okay.
But you were born with a female-shaped pelvis. Not that you have the organs or anything like that, but but you were totally landing on just soft tissue. There was no bone contact.
Okay.
So yeah, I think, you know, from a comfort standpoint, saddles are massively, like, have massively changed the game, so that we can actually see better distribution, we can see better relief and better blood flow. Urologists have gotten into the mix and have created some really great products as well. But I think a lot of men and women cyclists are just finally relieved, you know, that they're not just pigeonholed into male, female choices.
So it's more about not a men's this or women's that, but the measurements. Yeah. Do the measurements match what your needs are? Take
the sex out and just match up shapes. Same thing with the geometries of bikes. You know, you have a lot of everybody's a snowflake, right? You've got a lot of variability just in the human being alone.
Okay.
And so, you know, if you've got a smarter geometry with a wider variety of parts and pieces to choose from, handlebars, stems, shifters, crank arms, seat posts, etc., you know, you can really do a lot with just a few sizes of bike, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So on the concept of comfort, again, I'll bring a parallel into money, or I think not just money, but anything in life. You can only do something that's extremely difficult for so long, and you fatigue out of it. So, like when it comes to money, get in some type of a schedule discipline that's attainable, whether that's saving whatever rate you can handle that's still having fun in life. You can have a hardcore budget for maybe a month or two, you know what I mean? But you can only eat rice and beans for so long, and you need to expand your food palette. So I think in anything in life, whatever that endeavor is, there's the recognition that there's maximum effort of something that on paper seems ideal, but then there's the real life, like look at how many New Year's resolutions people stop within the month of January. Then there's also that real life aspect of it, that this has got to be sustainable for the long term.
Yeah.
And it seems to me like that's what's been realized in the biking world, and that needs to be realized in a lot of other world, money and everything else, is that, listen, this is to use a marathon expression, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah.
But go about it in a way that the long-term success is going to be realized.
Yeah, 100%. It's got to be fun.
Yeah.
Even if you're a die-hard OCD type, cyclist, there's got to be an element of fun, or you're gonna burn out. We, as humans, I think we definitely overlook like what boredom feels like and looks like. So there's got to be an element of fun, in the bike industry too. We can't be squabbling over the 20, the 80-20 rule, right? We can't be squabbling over the 20% of people that actually want to like suffer.
Yeah.
We really need to open that up to a much bigger market and make it fun.
Yeah.
I could definitely see where, I think the idea of money and budgeting, there's not a lot of fun there, right?
Right.
So
The word budget's horrible. Like, people think it tells them everything that they no longer get to do. And to me, it tells you what's important to you and what you want your life to look like.
Yeah.
And then you find more efficient ways of getting there. But yeah, it's got a bad name to it, budget.
And it depends on who you are. The old saying, make more or want less. But like once you identify who you want to be, well, then you start working towards that goal. What do those habits look like, and behaviors look like, and so on and so forth. And quite frankly, it's no different on the bike. Like, how are we going to make this sustainable for you?
Yeah.
Because we're all
on that concept, there's I don't know what the number is, but as we get closer to the date of the Tour de Youp event, which is toward the end of July every year, I start to get some emails of people that have experienced injury and they're not going to be able to make it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, so I ride my bike, I run, I sign up for events, I do some different things so that I can be healthy my entire life.
Sure.
Like that's my objective. I'm not trying to break my body down. I'm not trying to get injured. I'm trying to be healthy.
Yeah, that's really
And I do find that on this idea that some people have, that they have to push so unbelievably hard to get to something. And then they get fatigued and they break down.
Yeah.
Right before the fun thing was supposed to happen.
Yeah, navigating those setbacks. You could see where that would be a good place for people to not even want to start, right?
Yeah.
Just imagining what's going to happen is enough for a lot of people. You have a great saying in your emails, you're capable of so much more than you believe.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't even put the shoes on because they're worried about those setbacks, so they don't even try.
Yeah.
But it's up to people that believe in other people and want to see them succeed while doing hard things, to help them navigate that and make it sustainable for the long haul. That
saying is one of our mantras in the tour, and people prove it every single year.
It's awesome.
You're capable of more than you realize. People show up and they prove that all the time. Let's see. I want to ask you about fitting. Now, I know I've got some other questions too, but I want to stay with this fitting for a second, because we have people show up to the ride. And there was a guy last year that he didn't look right on his bike, and
Dun, dun, dun.
It took too many days for somebody to point out that his seat's too high.
Yeah.
And then his life was so much better
Oh, yeah.
afterwards. So are there visual cues besides the machine? Are there visual cues that are apparent that you can look for when somebody is
Absolutely.
when somebody's being inefficient?
You know, I pointed it out earlier. There is something to be said about the face. You know, I said smile earlier, but
Okay.
a relaxation can actually happen in the face when things are actually in place.
Okay.
Because it's a total body contribution. You know, all of the muscles in the body, the mind, etc. So the face is actually a big. I see it all the time in my before and afters. When somebody is in a good place, there's a relaxation that happens. There's a tipping point in your center of gravity as well. Okay, so your center of gravity lives just below the subscap, so right below the shoulder blade.
Okay.
And if that point is too far forward, your core, your lower half, your low back is not going to be able to support your head, right? So things start to kind of break. You go past your tipping point, and you can actually watch their spines start to show that big rounding.
Okay.
And the big piece to that is when that spine starts to round, you actually have a respiratory component there as well, right?
Okay.
So they're going to actually be cutting themselves off from those big
That
breaths,
oxygen.
right? Yep, that
Yeah.
oxygen intake.
A little bit important.
Yeah, huge, right?
Yeah.
So that basically eliminates a big piece of their power output. So you've got just a sense of relaxation in the body. You've got the tipping point where their center of gravity is. Certainly, leg extension. It usually it shows up in how much movement is happening in the back half of the rider, right? How consistent and how stable is that pelvis on the saddle, right? If they're rocking quite a bit, that means they're reaching. Like you almost don't have to know somebody's hamstring flexibility if you're seeing that pelvis, because you know the hamstring anchor's there, right? If it's hitting the end of its range of motion, it's going to naturally pull on the pelvis and drop one side to the other. So you see a lot of excess movement, right, in the pelvis. You see potentially a lot of movement in the ankle as well to try and make up for it.
Okay.
Those are the types of things that I think we all can recognize as like something is wrong.
And what do those things cause? Like, what's the
man.
net effect of that?
Yeah, a host. Well, right. If one contact point isn't happy, then no contact point is happy. So your
Okay.
contact points are your feet, your pelvis, and your hands.
Okay.
If you're miserable in the hands, you're going to be doing something somewhere else to help mitigate that, to help
Okay.
offset it. If you're miserable in the saddle, you're going to be using your hands, right, to try and offset that. So
Okay.
you're going to look like you're doing a press up off the front of the bike to try and get rid of maybe some pressure at the front of the
So
saddle.
as you keep talking, I'm visualizing all these riders.
Yeah,
and,
I'm sure.
God, I got to get you up there one of these years
Oh,
to
yeah,
ride. But I can, like, I would love to, like, even if you observe all the riders on day one, you'd be like, okay, we got to fix this, we got to fix that.
You know, and I mean that's part of the story, right?
Yep.
The other part of the story is like, what have they been doing all their lives?
Right.
Right. You know, you've got folks that have been working a desk job. That comes with its.
I do have a standing desk in the office, and I
Good man.
hardly ever have it raised.
Well,
I
that's
gotta
hard.
get
That's
on
hard
it.
to do too. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, like that. You know, I've got delivery. You know, these fit-looking men and women coming in doing all this delivery work, UPS, FedEx, what have you. They have their own host of problems because of the way that they go from a sitting position and then come down heavy with a load of packages. So that's the other part of it, right? Is like, well, before I just go in and be like, you need to lower your seat, I also need to know what I'm going to be doing when I lower your seat. If we lower your seat, what happens at the top of the pedal stroke? Oh, turns out you have a femoral acetabulum. You have a problem with your hip, and now I've just made it worse.
Okay.
So it's not as simple as just throwing out fitted advice, unsolicited, right? You got to be careful with how you place that advice and make sure.
And I'm always hesitant to do that.
Yeah, because
on the ride.
I said it earlier.
I tell
it's
people
personal.
so much in advance, like get fitted, and so I assume they took my advice, but I don't think most of them do. So they show up, and I'm not there like on day one, like, oh, you're wrong. You got to do this. But like you're saying, all those other aspects.
You've got 3. There's probably more, but skiers, golfers, cyclists, they're usually willing to get that analysis, right? So
Yeah.
you're luckily working with a good crowd. I would imagine with finances, it's that's almost even more personal. It's almost even harder. They seek you out for their advice, and that's kind of where we live too. Like, you tell somebody to get with a financial advisor. You tell somebody to get with, but they're gonna wait until it's bad.
Yep.
Sometimes, because
Yep.
pain's the best motivator, right?
Oh, isn't that awful?
It is.
I
Why wait?
I don't know.
Why wait until you're
We
in a
should
bad
learn.
place financially? Why
Yeah.
wait until you're in a bad place?
Yeah.
You're now your PT is telling you to get a bike fit. That's not
Yeah.
a good place, right?
No.
So do the preventative, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you? I know you work with a lot of people. Do you have any stories about where you saw like some changes on the fit or in comfort or something like that, and how that helped them in whatever it was, their event or their endeavor they were going after?
Yeah, I mean, countless stories, right? I think my favorites are the ones where they actually reach back out with a photograph of them crossing that finish line.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, it gets me every time, right? Like,
Yeah.
those are the ones that I think people would think about, in performance cycling, right? Like they cross the finish line, they're on a podium, but I just as much I love when somebody achieved their goal of dropping 150 pounds. And I was there along the way, because a lot of this is a haircut. It's not a surgery, right? Like we're evolving as you evolve.
Yeah.
So those moments where you get to be part of someone's evolution, I mean, that's why I think that's probably why I do it, right?
Yeah.
I get to live vicariously through you, and that happens all the time here, because we have folks that are just novices, and we have folks that are elite athletes, and we get to experience both sides of the coin there.
Yeah.
And it's equally gratifying.
Yeah. So with I've learned a lot in running and climbing a mountain, so many athletic things, and also biking, that form is so important. Yoga, for example, form,
Yep,
so many
sure.
things. Is there, and like, for example, if somebody says, I can't stand running, it hurts my knees.
Mm-hmm.
And then, just out of curiosity, I say, can I look at the bottom of your shoes? And they have no sole on their heel.
Yeah.
They're a heel striker. Of course it hurts your knees.
Yep.
You're
Yep.
jamming that thing into the
Yep.
concrete all the
Yeah.
time. I hear a lot of people...
What you don't know can't hurt you.
Right, yeah. I hear a lot of people say, well, biking just isn't comfortable for me. So you've talked about this a bit already, but on the form side specifically, like for running, like I like to land flat-footed. Flat-footed, my knees cushioning the concrete. And when I run, I don't have any knee problems when I run with correct form.
Yeah, I was just thinking about this today. I like to jog too. I like to run too. And it's like, okay, you most of us should try to be a midfoot strike.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that is if you have an arch in your foot.
Right.
Because if you don't have an arch in your foot, you're missing the spring that's built into your foot. So I just recently started moving my run. Now again, this comes with a caveat. Had to dial back the miles,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm actually starting to run as a forefoot again. So I got rid of a lot of the padding in my shoe, and
Okay.
I had to get my calves ready, and I had to dial back. But I've got the flattest feet you could imagine.
Okay.
It is a pointless foot to run on. It is a pointless foot to run
Okay.
on. So and I love it, but I love it. Right.
Yep.
And it's what we always say is like, I pee a little blood when I come off the bike, but I love it.
Okay.
Like, why do you love it?
Yeah.
Like something's like, we should probably do something about
Yeah.
that. Right. But we do, we push past the pain, and we get to, maybe this nostalgia around it, or somebody we knew that was important to us. And that's why we love it. Or it's easy to just go right out our door and run. And that's why we love running and walking and what have you. But yeah, we're all so different that everything comes with an asterisk next to it.
Okay.
So form, going back to like, is there a proper cycling form? Yeah, sure. Like with lines and angles and degrees, there is absolutely a proper form, but nobody's perfect, and nobody is that form. Nobody's the average, right? So you have to make sure that you're working with what that person's got.
Yep.
However, you want to find where whatever you've got, whatever angles you've got, whatever range of motion you've got, you want to make sure that that they're capable of maintaining it, because I'm not going to be out there reminding them to bring their chest up and out and get proper posture, right? It's got to be a little bit of who they are and a little bit about, what we're trying to work towards. A little bit of carrot, a little bit of stick, right?
Yeah. This is really interesting. Thanks. You keep emphasizing the importance of understanding what's going on with somebody, and I think in my mind I have this idea that there is a perfect X. There is a perfect form there, and as you keep talking and sharing about that, we're all a snowflake, we're all different, we're all unique, and that's really important to recognize. And again, it across all aspects, money and everything else.
Yeah.
We want, hey, you did this really well. What did you do? I want to go replicate that. And to some degree, there's some components of that might be able to be done. However,
Sure. Yep.
Yeah, we all have totally different.
Yeah. However, I did what was right for me.
Right.
You get a lot of folks that will come into the fit studio and they'll be like, "Well, I don't ride 100 miles every day like you do," and they they assume, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, no, I actually, you should see my parents. Like genetically, I've been blessed with good parents and decent genes.
Yeah.
How did you get so fit? Well, I did what was good for me.
Right.
And I think understanding personality types.
Yep.
Is a big way to see somebody succeed.
Yep.
Right. Introverts, extroverts, etc. Like
Yep.
type A, type B. I can put somebody on that exam table and ask them to play dead so that I can check their range of motion.
Yep.
And as soon as they tense up and show resistance, I'll, just as like a cheeky sideshow, I'll be like, "Oh, you're type A." And they'll be like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, are you type A or type B? And I'm definitely type A.
Okay.
Because you push back,
Okay.
right? Like that's, and so, before you start to work with somebody financially, it'd be nice to know if they're type A or
Yeah.
type B, wouldn't it? Right?
Yeah.
Because you'd be able to build a plan that's probably specifically for them.
Well, the more you've been
Specifically
sharing
for
about this, you do a great job of it. I mean, hats off to you about this need to understand where somebody's coming from and their uniqueness. As you keep sharing that, I'm thinking about like a lot of my people that I meet with and clients, and nobody's at the same starting point, and we have behaviors and ideas around money or anything else that we're trying to pursue in life.
Yep.
We've got experiences and behaviors and ideas and methods that we've used, and I might say, or somebody might say, whatever field they're in, hey, these are the 10 optimal practices or whatever, and maybe possibly they are. However, it's not realistic that it's not gonna fit everybody's needs.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's pieces of there that everybody can use, but we all we're coming from a different starting point.
Yep.
And we need to work from that.
And I think that's what makes certain experts better than others, right?
Yeah.
Because it's going to be a custom one size fits one, versus trying to fit everybody into the same mold.
Yep.
Greg LeMond, famous American cyclist, after his success, wanted everybody in the cycling world to get a 20 offset seat post and to slam the seat back as far as they could on the rails.
Okay.
Because that's what he does.
Okay.
And look at all of his success.
His success, it must work.
Turns out he had like a 2-inch longer femur. It's 2 centimeters or 2 inches, I forget which, but he had insanely long femur bones.
Right.
That he had to actually slide his seat back.
Okay.
Right. But I mean, once you discover that golden nugget that you can share with the world, you want to share, right?
Right.
But realistically, friggin' 1% of who you shared it with is going to benefit from it.
Right. Yeah.
The rest of us are like, oh, I'd love to be who
Right.
you're talking about. When you read a magazine article and you're just like, we're talking about, oh, I'm the average, right?
Right.
Turns out nobody is.
Right.
Average lives between two people. It literally is nobody.
Right.
Now you could get lucky and
Yeah.
be really close to that average, but more often than not, we're further down the spectrum than where that average lives.
So kind of the trick is, you describe it as a smile on that person's face. So kind of the trick is, what is the goal? And it's not to, have a certain millimeter stem or something like that. That might be somebody's way of getting there. But what is the goal? I don't know what the goal is. What is the goal? You described a smile on the face sometimes. And we're going to use different tools to get to the point where we are as efficient as we can be on whatever this project or this endeavor is that we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, the best version of yourself, right? That's the goal.
Yeah.
You know, and you also don't want to see anybody's investment go down the drain. That's my goal. You know,
Okay.
I mean, you're coming to me for a service, and you know, you're entrusting that I know what the hell I'm talking about, and you know, at a certain point, you're allowing me to spend your money too.
Right.
You know, so there's a lot of trust that goes into it. So I think that's probably the goal, is like, trust me, because
Yep.
if you trust me, then we can have a rapport, right? Then we can work together, and it really does. Like, after the trust is built in what I do, and I'm sure in what you do, everything happens from there.
Yep.
Right? We start talking about things that are unrelated to bicycles, right?
Yep.
We start talking about relationships and jobs and stuff like that. But like, once that trust happens, I think that's the goal, is like we make that trust happen, and then the world's our oyster.
Yep. So you fitted me. You fitted my son Owen.
Yeah.
So he did the tour first at age 17. I'm sure you remember him coming in. It wasn't that long ago.
No, I was super jealous.
And he's done it 3 times now, all 1,200 miles, 3 different years.
Yep.
But we're almost the exact same height.
Yep.
We're within, could be a few millimeters, depending on the day, depending on how tall I can stand at any given point in time.
Yep.
1/2 inch tops if I'm really sagging.
Yeah.
But we have a completely different fit as well.
Yep. Yeah. We, you know,
He
we
has
wanted
a longer torso.
we
and-
wanted to we wanted to
He's got
basically
different flexibility and
it's not just an accommodation, but it's how do we like emphasize your strengths, right?
Right.
And if Owen's more legs and more arms,
right.
you know, and we can potentially take advantage of the orientation of the parts and pieces for the bike to be more aerodynamic or closest to the way that it was designed, then
Yeah.
you know, that's what we're going to do. But yeah, it you know, a lot of people are the same height until they sit down, and
Yeah.
then you know, you cut them in half, and then
Yep.
it turns out there's two big pieces to the equation, the upper and the lower half, and then you got the arms, and then you got the flexibility too, right? So you're kind of like taking all of this into consideration. People could be 6 feet, you know, across the board, but one guy's built like Bluto and the other guy's built like olive oil.
He said the only reason I'm nearly as tall as he is because I have a bigger head.
yeah, they should. Yeah, you know, and you're probably stronger in the upper body because you got to deal with that big
Yeah,
noggin, right?
I hopped on his bike a couple times earlier this year, and man, it was like riding a completely different
Yep.
machine than mine.
And that's the starting point too. Like, you get a lot of folks that are like, "Hey, my buddy's got a bike. He's gonna sell me," and it's sort of like, okay, well, is he roughly the same height? Okay, well, that's a good starting point for the bike geometry, but
Yep.
that's not necessarily where the parts and pieces are gonna end up.
Yep.
And then a lot of us are tweeners, right? So like, could we get away with a medium bike? Could
That's
we get
me.
away with a large bike? Yeah.
Yeah.
And the answer is yes, as long as we're orienting the parts and pieces where they need to be, and then not, obviously, we don't want to do the engineers a disservice and so over accommodate that it doesn't function well, doesn't
Yep.
handle well, doesn't wind up well. So like, yes, you can get parts and pieces to where they need to be with all the different accommodations that we have at our fingertips,
Yep.
but do you really want to?
Right.
It used to be way more common to order custom frames. Like, that was a thing for a long time, whereas we were going like tube to tube.
Yep.
And it made you feel really, really special.
Yep.
And then manufacturers just got smarter and picked up on some of those geometries that they were creating with tube to tube construction,
Yep.
and now you just have better out of the box bikes.
Yep. So let's talk about the bike I ride is a Trek Bicycle, and in my opinion, I think it's like the pinnacle of bikes for the riding that I do up in the UP, adverse road conditions, a little bit of gravel here and there, long rides. I've just found it to work perfectly.
Yeah.
So somebody wants to get in and do an event. Like, how does this whole, what's this, they need to find a bike, they need to get their size, they need to
Yeah.
be fit to the bike. So what does this thing look like if somebody's just getting into this?
It's a process, right? And it's a process of like digging in and finding all the right information. But the bikes have kind of like a spirit, right? So you want to pick the right bike for the right job, and then you tailor it. You
Okay.
know, kind of in the tailoring business. The Domane is a perfect example. You know, something with a longer wheelbase is going to offset some of those bumps and bruises, and they've got, you know, shock absorbing properties built into it.
Right.
But you're still using lightweight carbon fibers,
Yep.
right? So it's no different than automobiles, right? Like, what's its intended purpose, and how can we make it the best version of itself?
Right.
With anybody's process, right? We want to talk about, we want to talk about budget, right? Like, we want to talk about what are you willing? Because quite frankly, you can buy speed.
Yeah.
You know, you can absolutely,
a bit of it.
Yeah, a bit of it. We even talk about in the bike world, it's $1,000 per pound. And, you know,
Okay.
when you talk about that, it's like, ooh, well,
Yeah.
does it really work? Yeah. Well, you know, over the course of 100 miles, it is.
Yeah. We
But-
usually have a few pounds right around the midsection that we could
Yeah, and you know,
drop
and
for less.
at a certain point, it's total mass moved, right? So like, we want to make sure that you're in a place where, you know, you can improve, and then we can improve the position as well.
Yep.
So we want to set people's expectations as well, right?
Yep.
If you're not built like a traditional cyclist,
Yep.
your bike's not going to look
Yep.
like a traditional cyclist's
Yep.
bike, but
So-
it's going to look like you.
So figure out what kind of biking you're going to do. There's enough variety of bikes out there that they, like you called it, having a spirit. So there's enough bikes out there that would fit that lifestyle you're looking for.
Yep.
Find your frame, find your basic measurements. You can fit on medium, large, or a certain.
Yeah, and that's kind of the blueprint, right?
Yeah.
And that becomes what you can shop with.
Yep.
That becomes what you can weed out. Like, you know, this manufacturer's just not going to work for me. It's just going to take too many accommodations.
Yep.
Okay, this one does. Great. Now let's get those measurements and the equipment that we determined to be appropriate for you
Yep.
onto that bike.
Yep.
And then when you come to pick up your bike, it's like picking up a tailored suit.
Yep.
You know, we're here in my studio today, and the side cycle behind us has the bike's measurements on it. I haven't changed anything. He's coming in to pick up that bike tomorrow.
Yep.
Now, you can't see it if you're listening to the podcast, but you can see the process right behind James and I, and it's great because he's going to come in, and he's not going to have seen his bike yet.
Yep.
He's going to have just seen it, you know, digitally,
Right.
you know, when we showed it to him on the website, and then he's going to see his bike fit for him. And it's so funny because you ever see,
And
like,
it looks really cool.
you see,
So-
and you can almost tell who this person is.
Okay.
Like, couldn't you, like,
Yeah.
this person, okay, this person is maybe 6'1", right? You could guess
Okay.
like you could guess his height
Yeah.
just looking at it. Yeah. You could guess, maybe you could even guess like what he does for a living. You know what I mean? Like, there's so much in there, and
Yeah.
what is he going to do with it? Oh,
Yeah.
he's got aero bars on it. He's obviously doing triathlon, but it's a road bike, you know, retrofitted to be a tri bike.
Right.
And then, you know, you start like, oh, Steve, you modified his crank arm length. Like, what's
Yep.
the story there? Oh, well, he actually used to be, you know, a collegiate athlete and has
Yep.
an injury to his right hip, you know, so we had to accommodate that. You know,
I hope he puts a lot of miles on that thing. That thing
yeah,
looks
well,
badass.
he's got
Yeah.
big goals,
Good.
right? So
Yeah.
when you've got these big goals of accomplishing half iron, full iron distances, well, you know, what are we looking to spend?
Yep.
You know, like,
Yeah.
go.
So you got your size, you got your fitting, extremely important. You choose your, what else? How are you gonna?
Yeah. Choose your cut, right? You
Yep.
choose your trim package, right? Like what's going to mean the most to you.
How are you gonna carry your gear?
Then you
How are you gonna carry your hydration?
And then you personalize it.
Yep. And then, most important, time in the saddle.
Time and saddle.
Go
Yeah.
ride it.
Right, and that's the plan that you build with either yourself or your coach. And they're gonna need information, right? Like a lot of these coaches aren't gonna be out on the ride with you.
Yeah.
So we've got computers for that, right? We've got strain gauges and watt meters for that, right?
Yep.
So that bike has a power meter on
Yeah.
it so that he can provide that information so that he can achieve his goal.
Yep.
So we're not only building for like his immediate need, which is I want a bike. We're building for the future too.
Yep. So that last comment, time in the saddle, for me, that's a difference maker in a lot of things in life. And you can buy the perfect bike, or you can come up with a perfect financial plan, or you can come up with a perfect anything. But bottom line is, as humans, we all need to put time in the saddle. We need to save our money. We need to ride our bike. We need to go for a jog.
Yeah.
We need to do X, Y, Z. We've got to implement the plan in order for it to succeed.
Yeah, and I mean, doesn't it come down to like need or want? Like, actually, we don't need to do much of any of that, but we want to do it, right? Like, what about that want becomes the, how can we identify like the driver to make sure that want stays in us?
Okay.
Right. Like, where's the reward? Right.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's what will determine if you put in the time.
That's a really good point. So time in the saddle is important, but if you haven't identified the reason for that, you're just not likely to do it. If you have the reason, time in the saddle is going to happen.
We talked a lot about comfort, but
Yeah.
I'm here to tell you, like, bike seats aren't made to be comfortable.
Yeah.
I mean, they can be ergonomic, which certainly helps.
Right.
But ultimately, it was the old joke where like a pro cyclist is like, coach, like the saddle's killing me.
Yep.
And the coach says, well, pedal harder. It's opposing forces, right? If you pedal harder, you come
lift
up
a
off
little
the
bit,
seat, right?
Use your muscles more.
Yeah. So it's like, what else do we have to do to get you stronger
Yep.
to make sure that you're comfortable?
Right.
There's people that they're just weak as a kitten, right? They weren't born with the ability to connect to their muscles, but
Yep.
but luckily they're light,
Yep.
And so how do we make sure that they can tap in? We get a lot of like women, for example, have really great flexibility, or typically have good flexibility, and we try to use that long flexibility, but they just lose so much connectivity as they go through it, which is great if you're holding shavasana, or any number of yoga poses.
Yeah.
That I don't know. Then I think shavasana is the one where we just play dead. That was always my favorite.
Yeah.
Right? We just take a nap. That
Yeah.
sounds great. But are you actually getting anything for your abilities?
Yep.
And that's where like an outsider like myself can be like, we're getting nothing for what you feel is you tapping into your abilities.
Yep.
Yeah, so I become kind of that controller of the variables. I kind of went off on a tangent there.
No, that's good. So, but purpose, having that desire, having that why.
Yeah.
That's a common theme. Ryan and I have been talking to quite a few different people, and we hear that from a lot of the people we interview. They come back to that. Yeah, you've got to have a reason. You've got to have a purpose. There's got to be something driving it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure.
And if there's something driving it, then everything's you're going to do the other stuff.
Yeah, and we want to like everybody wants to be a part of that.
Yeah.
Like when somebody has a want or a desire or a
Yep.
drive, like you want a little. I don't know. It's contagious. Right?
Yep.
Like you want a little flavor of that too, because you could be just looking for that next push in
Yep.
your whatever venture you're off into. And so I one of the, everybody's a snowflake. Everybody's got a story. It's really great how many people come through this fit studio, and I get to draw correlations in my own life.
Yep.
And kind of use their energy and use their motivation and things that I do. So it's contagious. It's a wonderful service that we
Yeah.
offer, and I'm fortunate to be
I've got
a part
one
of it.
more question for you, but I don't know if you had anything else that you wanted to share or cover before I got my final.
Geez, I blacked out. Did we cover a lot?
We did, yeah.
No, I think I'm good. Go ahead with
So
your question.
the name of this podcast is
Wealth is a choice. Boom.
So I always like to ask people at the end of our conversation, do you think wealth is a choice?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just like anything. It is absolutely, wealth is a choice, because if it serves your identity, right?
Okay.
That's the identity that I have for myself. The way that I want to see myself is someone that is affluent or has wealth or can handle wealthy, ideas and items and what have you. But ultimately, it's sort of like that's the choice of who you want to be. I don't know that wealth is like a universal must-have, right? I wouldn't say that. It's not a one-size-fits-all, but for those that want it, you can absolutely make that choice, and you can seek the right advice, and you can put the right habits in place, and you can obtain that. I firmly believe you don't have to come from a place of privilege.
Yep.
You just have to come from a place of drive, right, to achieve.
That's an important thing that I hope people pick up on, is that our starting point doesn't matter as much as what our desire, what our behaviors are, and however you want to define wealth, whether it's monetarily or other achievements you're seeking in life.
Yeah, I agree. I think starting with what you have, I think that was a great point that we hit on. Starting with what you have, making that, shoring that up, finding the leaks, in your financial or in your athletic endeavors, patching those up, and then building a really great plan that's tailored to that person. Now you got me like hooked. Now you got me pumped. Like, okay, well, I can do this. Like I thought I might be able to. I wasn't quite sure, but now I'm feeling like somebody's on my side.
Well, you shared some real insightful things with me. I have a better understanding of why you're so good and why I've known you for so many years. You really have. Not ignoring our starting points. We've got to first embrace them. We've got to first look at them. You can find all the gains you want in efficiency and everything, but it's so vitally important to understand who we are, what we've got going on, how we got to where we are, and then finding purpose, having purpose in what it is we're trying to accomplish. Or you just it's not going to happen without purpose.
I really do wish it was a push button type scenario. A one size fits one is really where we're at this point, and it gets a little long winded. So I apologize if this went a little bit long, but I had a lot of fun
I love it.
talking about what we do here and finding correlations in wealth, because I'm sure we can all attest a little bit of extra wealth would go a long way in just about all walks of life.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt.
Doesn't hurt.
Thanks, Stephen.
All right.
Awesome, man.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Cool. Thanks, man.
Ta-da!